Welcome to the next episode of I'm Hired, and this is about the optimal job roles in a CV. John is here with us again. Hello, John. John,
Hi, Tim.
hi there. Could you explain to us really about what's the best way of doing a job roles or descriptions in your CV? First we can talk about clarity and relevance.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think in terms of I guess this, we'll go through not only clarity and relevance, but also I guess how to structure your CV. You kind of throughout. I think from a stylistic perspective, because I think some of the key points to start with are making sure that you focus on your most recent role first, because it's going to be the most relevant for what you're applying for. But making sure that it's very clear and concise. I think when you get a recruiter or a HR manager or a line manager reading, they want it structured. They want it easily navigatable. So choosing responsibilities that really reflect what your full role is it could be quite extensive, but really split that down into kind of key responsibilities. So, for example, if you're a management accountant, you might refer to the fact that you deliver month end. You look at variance analysis, reconciliations, but you might want to mention other key elements around the size of the division or the group that you're looking for. And once you've written that piece out, start to break that down into bullet points, because bullet points are easily readable. It's easy on the eye, and it helps again navigate. So kind of taking one of those sentences, put it into a bullet point. If you can shorten it, because it has to be short, sharp, and snappy, but obviously very relevant to what you do. To give I guess an overview of this is what I do in my role. This is my day to day. But not forgetting that you want to evolve on that a little bit further down from a value add perspective as well.
Yes, thanks, then. So people have to put, I guess, achievements in their CV. How would you quantify those achievements there?
Yes, I think once you've written the initial section, underneath I'd do achievements, and then include what really sets you apart. What have you done that nobody else in that business has done? So if I took a salesperson, for example, it might be that you've brought on X amount of new accounts. Those accounts are worth, you've taken that portfolio from zero to, I don't know, 2, 3, 400,000 pounds over kind of a 6-month period. You've signed PSLs with your kind of ex businesses that as an organisation you've never dealt with before. Because if if you're applying to a sales role, for example, it's probably the easiest because it's quite relatable to people.
Yeah.
If a hiring manager was to see that, they go, well, actually, you kind of sold X for one of my competitors. You've brought on that you kind of customer. I need that person in my team. I want to meet that person. So quantifiables, it's absolutely key, because ultimately your CV is a sales document, and it's what sets you apart. So yes, you've done X, but what was the value that was added? You've done X, what was the value that added? So if we went back to for example, in your industry where you're implementing systems, you might want to, I guess, put that you implement that system, but you've done it, kind of inside of budget by X amount, or actually
Yes.
these are the things that it's helped the business do off the back of you kind of doing the kind of user testing, actually going live. Because I mean, what are the sort of achievements that you would look for in that market, Tim?
So in terms of that market, I would look for, of course, what they've delivered on time, on budget, but also in terms of, goals, in terms of little mini kind of projects and things like that. So my kind of take on that is really do it short, sharp, to the point in that sense. Sure. So The other question is, should you tailor your job application, your job roles to the job application that you have?
Absolutely. I think that's the one thing that candidates really miss out on. Um, for me, it's you've got the core of your CV already. You've got the skeleton of your CV, but tailoring that to a position, it will take you 5 minutes to sit down, read through the job description that you've got in front that you want. Yeah, that's your next dream role. Spend time reading that job description and saying, right, they're looking for X, Y, and Z. Have I got that in my CV? Or have I done that in previous roles? And how can I reflect that? Because ultimately, when you are, it depends on your strategy. So if you're going through a recruiter, they should advise you to do this anyway, and explain what should be in your CV. But if you're going directly to a business, if it's going through an ATS system, so an automated tracking system, quite often, I guess, moving forwards, it will probably be AI related, and therefore it will almost mark your CV, focus on kind of keywords, certain accreditations. Have you got the sort of kind of core values that the business are looking for? And if that's grading it before going to a hiring manager, you want to make sure that your CV almost reads like that job description. And so once a hiring manager picks it up, they're almost reading their job description back, but with a flavour of your role and your personality in there. And obviously make sure that you have done these things before you do, because otherwise you will be found out. But putting those things and actually tailoring it and reflecting what that role is absolutely crucial, and will help you get so many more interviews. Because if a hiring manager, for example, has got 6 CVs in front of them, they'll probably only want to interview 2 or 3 people. And if everyone else has done that and you haven't, you will miss out. But it's a really, really simple way. And like I said, it'll probably only take you 5 minutes of making sure that you get through that door and have the opportunity to, I guess, present yourself and elaborate on what you've already put in your CV, really.
Yeah, I completely agree. Some of the CVs I see, I wouldn't say lazy. It's just like, it's not relevant, some of the aspects, and really it's just a waste of time in the CV. So in many ways in some of these applications. So just another question in sense, how do you deal with varied experience, and what about soft and technical skills and things like that? How would we kind of incorporate that?
Yeah, so I think some roles, for example, like a general manager, or just because it's the market, I mean, a head of finance, they'll probably wear many hats in a business, and trying to reflect all of that in a CV can be difficult if you just do it under one section. But how I would approach that would be to title it, or give the date. So from April 2022 to present, work for X business, position held, head of finance. But underneath that, break it down, do subsections. So, for example, you might be involved, you might be leading the controllership piece, and then detail what you've done under controllership in that area. Then you've got commercial business partnering, and you've done X, Y, and Z under that area. And then you might have delivered a number of projects, you've been part of project teams as well. So you might kind of put another subsection there. So again, it means that, one, you're breaking it down, but two, it's really, again, going back to my original point of, it's easily navigatable for the reader. And it might be only that 2 of those sections are relevant to this role that you're going for, but it draws the eye of the reader straight away, and then they can go and read it rather than going through absolutely everything. Because it is time critical in terms of getting the attention, but you still want to make sure that you have all of that information in there. Now, it might mean that your CV is longer as a result because you're breaking it down, but it gives white space, it's easier on the eye. And actually, I guess the old adage of it has to be a 2-page CV, I don't believe in. If it's relevant, put it in there. If it's not, don't. But if it's a 3-page CV, but it's all relevant and it's going to give the detail that someone wants, put it in.
I completely agree. I mean, I tell people to look at the CV as getting a job in getting a job in a way. So get the job role, whatever it is, put in the stuff that needs to be there in terms of different roles. Don't duplicate stuff, because it's like looking at copying and pasting effort. I did this, it's just a waste of, people are just looking at, of course, varied experience, but also the relevant experience. So in that sense, I look at that. And also, to be honest with you, sometimes formatting is very important too, because sometimes I look at it and it looks really not right, or the spelling or the grammar. So question to you, should there be a big emphasis on formatting, grammar, text, spelling, all this stuff?
Absolutely. Because I
Yeah.
think nowadays, with the systems we have, I think kind of grammatical and spelling, there's no excuse for it anymore. To be quite honest with you, I think people do pick up with that, and it is a bugbear of some hiring managers. I think from a formatting perspective, absolutely. I think keep it simple. At the end of the day, it's representing you. I mean, I think if it's for a design agency, you might want to be a little bit more elaborative, with the way that you deliver it. But if it's for more of a formal role, professional services role, keep it a very simple format. Break it down into your kind of top section. I think what we discussed previously in terms of a profile and academics. Underneath that, split it down role by role, and make it easily readable and to be followed, to be honest with you. Make sure you've got the dates in there so that people know the chronological order. It's much easier if you bullet point things. I'm not looking for kind of 4 or 5 words of a bullet point. It might be a sentence within a bullet point, but it's just easier to read, and actually is probably the preferable style, if I'm perfectly honest, for most readers.
Yeah, I completely agree again. So the thing is, I tell people just to think they're the interviewer and look at their CV itself and put the other hat on and say, would you employ this person based on this CV? Have a read at it, say you're interviewing yourself. Have a read at it and see if it works, what you're trying to do. So because sometimes people just get lazy and just put a CV in and think it's going to come back. So it's very important that you tailor to that. Another question, really. Of course, I'm a contractor, and in terms of my CV, could be a lot of experience and vary. Should a contractor's CV be different to a permanent CV, or what do you see? What's required in a contractor's CV, from your point of view?
From my point of view, I think a contractor CV it should be laid out in a very similar way, in the sense that your most recent role, but at the same time, because you might do 3 roles at any one time. I think when we first started speaking, I think you were probably running about 3 contracts at the time. I don't know how you had the time, to be quite honest with you. But I think within for that, for example, it might be that you put it all under the banner of your business name, the fact that you're running 3 concurrent contracts at any one time. Again, date them so that people kind of know, but also give an idea of how much time you're spending for each one of those contracts, because I think it'll show relevancy from if you were doing it, if that role's the only role that has a certain skill set in, but you're doing it 1 day a week, as opposed to maybe 4 days a week. It'll obviously differ in terms of how much exposure you've had, how much time you spent doing that role, and potentially how far you progressed within that role. So I think detailing that is important, but chronologically still. But I think a contractor CV might be slightly different in the sense that you might put a highlights reel before you start going into your career to show the key projects that you've worked on that they're actually relatable to the role you're going for. So again, it's making sure that it's relevant and making sure that the information that the reader wants is the most easily accessible. So you may end up putting a little achievements reel in there between the profile and the I guess the summary of your career from that perspective. So I think that would be the only thing that I would say to differ on a contractor CV, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and another related question to that is, So in a CV, there could be gaps and differences, and people are taking time off and other things in between contracts. How would you handle that? What would be the best way to explain the gaps and differences?
I think if you're in a contract role, I think it's normal, to be honest with you, for people to have gaps in the CVs, because you work quite extensively for 6, 9, 12 months, and it's nice to have that break. Because obviously as contractors, you tend to take less holidays, so you don't get paid for them. So it's probably better to continue working. But those breaks are fairly easily understandable. I think when you go through a recruiter, for example, they'll explain all of that to a client anyway. But I think it's all just putting in their mini career break, traveling, whatever you were doing, just to give people an idea of the fact that it was a genuine break. Not that it necessarily matters, because I think because sometimes people have a break because they're searching for a role, but don't just want to jump at the next role that comes along. They want the right role that's going to fit what they want to do.
Sure.
But I think nowadays there's less emphasis on, oh, you've had a gap in your career, what was going on there, as there might have done previously. So I think
Sure.
people realise that life happens. But just detail that in there anyway, just for full transparency.
Sure. Thanks for all that. So is there anything else you add? I'm going to add a methodology I use regardless. Is there anything else you want to add to this? Thanks anyway.
I think the other thing, kind of going back to what we mentioned earlier on in terms of tailoring of the CV to each role, and it's very much looking at those keywords, making sure that you're pulling out what's in that that job description, what's going to be relevant, and make sure that the hiring manager or whoever's hiring you is reading back what they've written to an extent. You spend time on it, make sure that you put the effort in, because it will be rewarding in the long term, and actually your sort of journey to get your next role will be much shorter if you put a little bit of time in. Just that 5-10 minutes, it will make a significant difference to you.
Oh, fantastic. So basically, I help with CVs. It's just a passion of mine, just help around there. So I just thought, myself, how would I break down each role and, in a kind of a sensible order. And I kind of started my own kind of methodology. Well, kind of, not that, it's a kind of something that you can remember by. It's called RAVES. So RAVES. So in that sense, what that means is each role, you can actually look at the responsibilities you've done, what, and it doesn't have to be, tons and tons, 1 or 2 big responsibilities. In those responsibilities, what are the achievements you've actually done, in that job, highlight them. And then the value add, this is very important, value added to yourself, what you picked up, onto the company. And then the next one, E for expertise. What is the expertise you brought to that role? Like something like HFM, I used this or learned a big element to the role. And the other thing is S for standards and best practices, because sometimes in the industry we come from, we have to use best practices, industry standards, all those stuff. So I'm saying you don't have to write reams and reams. You can even write a sentence on each, really. This RAVES methodology, and it does work. What I've seen is that it makes it easy readable, focusable, and also you don't tend to repeat stuff in this kind of methodology. And it makes it concise also, the CV, and great, because there's a lot of stuff in there in a CV I see that's not relevant to the roles or the jobs, and it could go on for 8 pages. I've seen a CV 15 pages, so which I could have summarized in 2 or even 1. People are really looking at that as a precursor to the interview, and that's kind of a job in a way. Can this person present himself or do all this stuff that in the role in his CVs? That's kind of a part of the interview process. Can he do concise, to the point, all that stuff. So yeah, thanks so much, John, for today, and looking forward to our next podcast in this series. Thank you so much.
No, absolutely. Thanks, Tim.
And take care.
You too.